Hello. You have just accessed a Richland School District 2 video on unpacking the South Carolina Elementary Social Studies Standards. In our time together, we will look at the standards and support document. We will look at an overview of Bloom's taxonomy. Then we will work on unpacking standards for instruction and assessment. Let's get started. So, what are standards and indicators? Standards are a general statement about the content. Standards tell us what students should know, understand, and be able to do in order to demonstrate mastery. Indicators are more specific statements related to the standard. They include content knowledge as well as the cognitive expectation or level of thinking necessary for students to demonstrate mastery. So let's see what standards and indicators look like in our standards document. Here you see a grade 1 standards page. As you can see, it includes several components. At the top of the page, you will see the theme for each particular standard, followed by the standard, and then the enduring understanding. This is more like the big idea or the big concept that students should take away from the unit. This is the learning that students should be able to transfer and remember and apply beyond the classroom. The indicators are then follow the enduring understanding, and as you can see, each standard has several indicators, and again, these give more specifics on what the students need to know in order to master the standard. And then there's a box at the bottom that shows the social studies literacy skills and 21st century skills. Our standards also have a support document. So, what is a support document? A support document does just as the name implies. It's a document that supports the standards in that it provides details about each standard, and even more specifically, it provides details about each indicator. So, let's take a look. Here you see a page from the support document, and as you can see, it has several components as well. There is the standard again, the enduring understanding also repeats, as well as the indicator. And then you get into some more detailed information. It includes the taxonomy level, which would be the Bloom's taxonomy level, and then the support document for each indicator gives very pertinent information on the content for each indicator. So you'll see previous and future knowledge. This section tells when students have encountered this knowledge in previous grades, as well as what students will encounter in future grades related to this knowledge. Following this section in the support document is a section that says it is essential for students to know. This would be the content requirement for students to master this particular indicator. So let's look briefly at taxonomy. Remember, I pointed out here that this includes the Bloom's taxonomy level, so we're going to look at that since the South Carolina standards are based on the revised Bloom. The South Carolina Social Studies standards based on the revised Bloom, and it includes actually detailed information about Bloom's taxonomy on pages 135 through 137 of your South Carolina Social Studies standards. However, in a nutshell, The framework includes the kind of knowledge and the kind of learning intended by a learning task, objective, or indicator. So, for example, if your indicator uses the Bloom's verb explain, let's look at where that falls here. It uses the Bloom's verb explain. According to this chart, the kind or level of learning would be analyzing, and the kind of knowledge required would be conceptual. Again, you can find more information on Bloom's taxonomy on pages 135 through 137 of your standards. And there are numerous charts online that include the verbs and their classification of the learning. All right, so let's get into unpacking a standard. The standard we will unpack is Standard 4-5.2, and it reads, explain the motivations and methods of migrants and immigrants who moved west, including economic opportunities, the availability of rich land, and the country's belief in manifest destiny. So, where do we begin? Step 1 is to identify the cognitive expectation. So what verb is given to define the learning objective? For this standard, the verb is explain. Now that we know that, we can move on to see what students are being asked to explain. So, step 2 in unpacking the standard is to identify the nouns or content that would be receiving the action of the verb. In this case, it would be motivations and methods of migrants and immigrants. Here, the remaining phrases in the indicator also give pertinent information. So after you know students are to explain the motivations and methods of migrants and immigrants, let's take a look at the other phrases. Who moved west? This tells us the group of migrants and immigrants this standard addresses. If we look at the part of this standard that's underlined here, this gives information on the motives and methods that are to be included in the explanation. So we should include economic opportunities, the availability of rich land, and the country's belief in manifest destiny. Now, once the standard is unpacked, what's next? So we have the cognitive requirement, which is to explain. We have the content requirement, and we can also refer to our support document to get more details on that. Now it's time to plan. So based on our information and knowledge of our students, our next step is to decide what instructional strategies and assessments should we plan for this indicator. So let's recap. To unpack a standard, we need to identify the verb or cognitive expectation of the standard. Then identify the noun or the content that's included that would receive the action of that verb. Our next step would be to plan instructional strategies that support students in meeting the cognitive expectation of the standard, and then design assessments that are aligned to the cognitive level required for student mastery of the indicator. I hope this video in some way adds value to the teaching and learning in your classroom. Thank you so much for watching.